Hi, I'm Tish Vest, and welcome to Horse Help. Feeding time at the horse farm presents its own challenges, especially when it's one person caring for a large number of horses. In the perfect world, we would have barns large enough to bring every horse in for their separate meals, but in reality, that isn't always how it works. I've come up with some ideas for feeding different groups of horses in a safe, easy way so that they can all get their separate meals without it being a big feeding frenzy and without all of the work and cleanup that would go into bringing all those horses into the barn to eat. When you're keeping a small group of horses, 4 or less, there are ways to feed them out in the pasture where they live so that you won't even have to bring those horses into separate places to get their feed. I like to feed hay first, and it's important to feed your boss horse the first flake that you throw out, and also to keep in mind that you always want to feed one more pile of hay than you have horses in your group. So if you're feeding 3, you want to have at least 4 piles of hay. That way, when someone gets chased away from their hay pile, they always have an option of someplace to go. When you're graining a small group, one method that you can use so that you won't actually have to go in with your group to feed them is to hang your buckets from the fence. And part of what's important about that is that as long as you go through your feeding order and feed your boss horse first, usually you can teach them to stay at the bucket that you feed them. As long as you're hanging them far enough apart, your horses aren't likely to fuss with each other. I like to have them at least 20 feet apart, even a little bit farther than that if your fence line is long enough. When you're feeding a larger group of horses, this presents a whole different set of challenges so that you're not dealing with a big feeding frenzy by walking out in a large group with a bucket of grain. One method that we've worked on here at Windhorse Farm in Virginia is I have a group of 13 horses that live out on about 75 acres of pasture, and we use a catch pen system as a method of feeding all of those guys individually. The catch pens are set up as individual outdoor stalls, I guess you'd say, that are about 12 by 12, each with an individual gate, and those guys are waiting to come in every morning when I come to feed them. And what I do is to put a flake of hay in each catch pen and open up the doors and get my feed pans out so that when I let my group of horses in, they all go and find their individual pens to go into. I close them in, and then I can come back with their grain meals so that they can all get the proper meal that I'd like for them to have in a non-stressful way where they're not worried that their neighbor is going to take it from them. The other advantage of the catch pen system is that if you have horses that are difficult to catch, they would learn from the others how to come in and get fed every morning, and very quickly they become a lot easier to catch than they were because you have the food incentive for coming in and getting caught in a separate pen. There's also an advantage there because I can hang on to those horses that I need for lessons or things later in the day, or riding later in the day, so that you don't have to head out into the big pasture to catch them again once you have them all up for the morning. And we've had very good success with this method. Unlike other horse programs, Horse Help is targeted to the do-it-yourselfer. Our goal is to present topics that will help horse owners be more successful in their own horse management. I have developed these techniques through 20 years of trial and error. Topics covered will include things like developing your own barn first aid kit and how to use it, when to call the vet, suggestions to deal with herd-bound issues, preparing for your first horse show, and a visit from the farrier. We will cover these topics using demonstrations and interviews shot in the lovely Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, using a down-to-earth style of presentation.